The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Thank you, Tally Olson. We are back. Lovin' baseball when we were 12 and innocent. In this case, 9 and innocent. My guest was 12 years old was 9 years old in 1969. And I'm betting, because he grew up on Long Island, that the New York Mets come into play in your memory bank. Seth Swirsky, how are you?
I'm great, and you couldn't be more dead on. I mean, it was all about those 69 Mets. I remember going to day camp, and I would bring my mitt, and I was the shortstop on the team, but I had a hidden transistor Sony radio in my mitt. So every single time there was a break between pitches, I'd pick up that radio and I would listen to see whether Wayne Garrett or Duffy Dyer or, one of those guys, Ed Kranepool, got a hit or not. And then I'd put the radio down because I had to get ready for the next play.
And you were playing shortstop, so Buddy Harrelson came to mind.
Buddy and Al Weiss. I could name the whole entire team and the backups. I mean, it still is a memory that brings a lot of comfort,
We have a lot in common. I can as well. I have a podcast on this network, New York Mets, and I also publish This Date in New York Met History, where every date is has been put on YouTube. So if you go to YouTube, This Date on New York Met History, plug in the date, 2-1, you get to come up with that. I am every bit as a fanatic as you were. I have one thing going for me that you don't. I was there for the birth of the New York Mets.
Wow.
You were too young to remember that. I was also in New York at the Polo Grounds, and beyond that, I was a New York Giant fan earlier on, and remember Willie and the New York Giants and the heartbreak of them moving out to California, and then the delight in living my life in California and being able to follow the San Francisco Giants and remain a Met fan and follow them long distance. So we definitely have a lot to talk about. Tell me about the first game that you went to at any age, who took you, and what are your memories of that first game?
Well, my first game was actually a preseason game in 1966. My dad took me to a game, and I'll never forget it because the name just stuck in my head. The first batter was Jerry Buchek, a second baseman.
From St. Louis. He came from St. Louis.
That's right. I just remember it and seeing Shea Stadium with the orange and blue, placards on the outside of the stadium. And so when you're 6 years old, you're like, everything is so big. Cut to 1967. Here I am, 7 years old, and it's the summer of love, and I'm into the Beatles, and that's all I wanted to be was a Beatle. But baseball was such a passion of mine, and I just fell in love with Yaz. And when we played wiffle ball in the backyard, even though I'm a righty, I learned how to bat left-handed with that when he stuck that bat way up in the air. And I remember the very, very first memory was Jim Lonborg in Game 7 on 2 days rest losing. But the biggest gateway in for me was the next year's World Series. I'll never forget, Jim Northrup hitting that triple over Curt Flood's head to win that World Series over Bob Gibson in Game 7. And I understood the game more. I was a little older, and every year in those years, you really, really get a better grasp of it. When it hit 1969, when you're then 9 years old and you're really into the game now, that team just could do no wrong. I lived and breathed for that team. I mean, I loved the day games. I mean, the minute school ended after we started flipping cards, and all I wanted was, I wanted the whole 1969 set, which I did end up getting, and I have it in my room downstairs. But that team was just so magical, and I was fortunate enough to become friends with Rod Gasper and a little bit with Seaver and some of the other players. I was backstage ready to do an interview for my first book on baseball. And who was backstage with me, ready to do an interview right after mine? Don Clendenin. So I said, Don, are you wearing your '69 MVP World Series ring? He said, yeah. I said, can I try it on? He goes, absolutely, no problem. He puts his World Series 1969. I was back in '69. Okay, you can only imagine. The nicest man in the world, by the way. So it really, everything blossomed and opened up in '69 for me with the Mets. But those first games and those first memories I wanted to mention to you.
Well, those first games in the World Series, Frank Robinson, one of my all-time heroes, said about Rod Gasper, who I had on my show, and mistakenly called, he had to correct me, it wasn't Gaspar, it was Gasper. But he was a nice guy. But Frank Robinson said, and I think it motivated the Mets, who the hell is Rod Gasper?
Oh, that's hilarious.
He was quoted as saying that. And they were a miracle team. Swoboda and making those catches, and Tommy A.G. But you mentioned Clendenin. Without Clendenin, there was no Met victory. There was no Met World Series. They got him late in the year.
Yeah, after the shoe polish incident, which was the genius of Gil Hodges. No Gil Hodges, no victory. Because then Clendenin hit the home run, the 2-run home run, and brought them back against McNally.
And without Gil Hodges in spring training believing in them, he was the first to believe. He and Jerry Grody had this thing where they knew that the pitching staff was that dominant.
Yeah.
And it had everything. It had down the line experienced relief pitching. And to come from where they were in '62 to then in 7 short years.
That's right.
It was incredible.
No question about it. I just got to mention one other thing about Rod Gasper. Gasper. Okay. I won't correct you if you won't correct me. No problem. I started a baseball collection back when I started doing these books. I wrote letters to a lot of baseball players, and they became 3 books of letters with players that wrote back to me these answers in their own handwriting. So it's the Baseball Letters collection. It's in 3 separate books. But I started to get more into the history of the game, and here I was a songwriter writing for, different artists, Olivia Newton-John and a bunch of them, Celine Dion, Air Supply, all the big artists of the day. But I really got deeply into baseball and started a collection. So I had the ball, Reggie's 3rd home run ball from the '77 World Series. I had the ball that went through Buckner's legs in the '86 World Series. I had some real things.
Oh, wow.
But I started to get into other things. And when Rod Gasper's jersey from '69 came up from the World Series, I was at that game. I was 9 years old. I was sitting off of third base with my dad, and he raced in from second base when they hit J.C. Martin in the back with that throw up the first baseline, and the Mets won. That jersey came up for auction, and I said, it doesn't matter. I'll sell whatever it takes to get that jersey. Well, I did win the jersey. And then coincidentally, I met Rod, and I brought it with me. I said, Rod, what do you think this is? And he looked at it. And he signed the jersey. He goes, that's my '69 World Series jersey. That's the jersey I wore when I crossed that plate. Now, that was, you can only imagine, that's a full circle feeling. Because when you're there and you're 9 and the world is a different world at that point. But then when you can bring it back to the player. So it was a tremendous connection, and that was the extra little story I wanted to tell you about Rod, and a tremendous guy.
That was jersey number 11, if I'm not mistaken, and I may be on that. You can correct me.
I think 11 was Wayne Garrett. Wasn't Wayne Garrett 11?
Very possible. The numbers started escaping me, and
right.
I used to follow every number. A guy would come up, Brooks would come up as 35, and he'd change his number to 7 or whatever.
That's right.
And that was sad. U.B. Brooks was a terrific third baseman, and they gave him up, and he never got to play in the World Series with the Mets.
Amazing.
But Boswell did. Garrett at third, and the Glider. What a team! It was nice. Ed Kranepool, got to give him credit too for all of this. He was Lenny Randall brought him on. I did a thing with Lenny Randall on this podcast network, and he brought Ed Kranepool on, and so we are both Walter Middies. Will you agree?
Oh yeah, and don't forget Shamsky. Shamsky played a role too. He had a bunch of key home runs, and he was somebody that was, they all. It was like a puzzle. It was a puzzle that all the pieces just happened to fit, not by luck. They all played hard, like you said. Gil Hodges really gave them that belief. He was the dad that really believed, and they all believed, and they had the talent, and it was just really one of those, especially when you put them up against in that Eastern Division with the Gibson-led, two-time World Series appearance Cardinals, and there were some tough teams. The Giants were very, very tough in the West. The Dodgers were always good for some reason. The winningest team of the 1960s. The Braves. In the playoffs. And that was no mean feat. Braves was still solid. Always a lot of good hitting. I was at that game that Hank Aaron hit a home run. I think it was the first inning, and we thought, the dream is going to die here. But that was game 3, and they won it in 3.
Seth, tell me if you didn't. I wasn't going to correct you in any way, but tell me if you didn't pronounce Shamsky. At least a relative of yours, an older relative, would have pronounced his name Shamsky.
Yeah, didn't I say that?
With the Shamsky, with the accent. As far as I know, he was the first Jew to play on. Jewish myself, naturally, and he was the first Jew to play with the Mets. Great platoon with him and Swoboda, and
tremendous.
Made for a nice team.
Really did.
I'll ask you, Seth. What about today's game is better than it was, and what about today's game? What do you miss most about those days?
Well, I'll tell you, I'm going to be very honest with you. I'm a very positive guy, and I'm a very upbeat guy, and I always see the silver linings in things. I am not like, this is no good and that's no good. I'm not that guy. I'm not a guy who looks back and thinks that everything that happened in my era was better. Okay, so I need to preface it by saying that. But I think the game is significantly less than it was, and I'll give you the main reason why. The main reason is video replay. That should be banned from baseball. Now, the reason it should be banned. Now, I know you can't put toothpaste back in the tube. I get it. But it never, ever should have been. It doesn't fit with the game of baseball. Here's the reason why. If there's a player on second base and you're 1 run from winning the World Series, and your guy on your team, your team as a runner on second base, and you've come from 3 games down, and it's game 7, and your guy gets a hit, and it looks like it's going to drop in, and it drops in, and your guy rounds second base to score, you're jumping up and down with your dad and your family members and your brothers and sisters, and you're just the soft drinks are spilling all over the couch, and the chips are flying, and you are as happy as it gets, whether you are in the stadium or at home. And then they say, wait, we have to go to video replay. That ball might have stayed in the defender's mitt. So what are you supposed to do for the money and the time that you put in to watch the game, the money, if you went to the game, and the time that you invested? Because the reason we watch games and the reason we like sports is because we want to give out emotion. We want to feel things. That's why we go to Broadway shows. It's why we go to concerts. It's why we listen to things. We want to feel things that we wouldn't feel in our normal everyday existence. So we cheer. Our team won. Oh my God, what a comeback. What an amazing thing. But then they tell you, no. We might have to take back that emotion that you paid for, because that's what you're mostly paying for. And so they reverse the call, and then you're like, okay, what was that? What was that? You've got to get with that. So everything you just emoted is gone. It's erased because, God forbid, we don't get things perfect. Now, I gave you an example of a World Series game. Let's say it's a game in the middle of May against a team that you don't care about. It doesn't even matter, but you're at a game, and you want to still cheer for your team. And that same play happens in the middle of the year. You're with your dad. You're with whoever you're with. You're enjoying the game, and you cheer. Your team just won. No, we got to go to the video replay. Because of baseball's obsession with getting every little thing perfect. Was he safe at first? Because that might change. That's the trickle down. It might change every single thing that happens in the universe of baseball this year. Now, that's ridiculous. In our day, those kind of calls were made up. You got as many breaks as you got breaks against you. It was just called human nature, just like we live every day. And baseball, to me, represents human life better than any other game. There are 9 innings. It kind of represents 9 decades of life. There are mistakes that are made. There are muffs that are made. You get over them. You get over getting down in a game, all of those things. But what video replay has done is it takes the emotion away. Because even when you get that big score, or the great thing happens and you cheer, you now know, well, wait a minute, they might ask for an instant replay on it, and so you can't really get too excited because of their obsession with perfection, and that is a definite. That cuts the game in half for me. One last thing. I know I've talked a lot, but let me just say this one last thing.
No, that's the idea, Seth. Please talk more.
This last COVID thing that happened, this last thing, now everybody had to do whatever they did. I mean, all these sports organizations and a lot of these places, they had to figure it out on the run. It was a very difficult thing. So I have sympathy for them. It's not an easy thing to be a commissioner or to be, people that an owner of a team or just a player. Very difficult to figure out how many games do we not play, all the stuff that goes into that. So I have a lot of empathy just before I even begin this. But for them to make a rule that a player in the 10th inning starts on second base. Okay, let's say it's just for the COVID time, which I still disagree with. But then they continue it because they're so afraid that they're losing fans. The game isn't quick enough. They start a player on second base. You know what we have now? We have T-ball. We have third graders playing baseball. All you need is a single to win a game. You change a rule like that. The reason baseball is so great, and this is why Rob Manfred should never be even close to a baseball stadium or an executive suite or anything to do with the game. We should buy them a ticket to New Zealand and say thank you. The reason is baseball is the one thing in America. One thing. There are very few things that change. In England, they have the king and the queen. That hasn't changed for 900 years. They have continuity. The one piece of continuity we have in this country is baseball. The game basically has not changed since the 1870s when they outlawed the rule that you can't throw a ball at a player to get him out. Other than that, it's the same game. So people back then who didn't have cars, didn't have telephones, didn't have airplanes, they didn't have anything, they have nothing what we have today. But you know what? When they sat down in a seat to watch a game, they had the same emotions. They had the same experience that we have now. That's called continuity. It's a nice thing when it's in society. But now, we don't have that. We can't compare records of certain players right now. 7-inning doubleheaders, sticking a man at second base. That is so absurd. It makes me almost not want to watch. So there's my diatribe on why the game is significantly not as good.
Okay, I'll do two things. First of all, I cannot even debate or argue your point. The thrill one gets as a fan, it's over, the game's over, and that a case could be made for negating instant replay based on your description only. Mm-hmm. But I just want to tell you what caused that was the ineptitude of umpires and the umpire union that made it impossible to get rid of. I won't even mention any names, but some are so blatantly incompetent that fans will go, whoa, gotta run this back just to protect ourselves. Does that make sense?
But can I debate that point? Just take that point on for a second. I don't disagree with you. The people that call the balls, it's like saying the police are bad in society when one bad incident or a few bad incidents have happened. We live in a country of 330 million people. For the most part, the police are good people doing the best they can to call balls and strikes every day that they get called anywhere. It's a difficult job. I'm not saying that the umpires are great, are perfect, but they do, as you have to have people. I want the human elements. Because you start sticking a camera on everything, you've got the Zapruder film on every single play, and play it first. And you're going to have balls and strikes before you know it. And then you won't have any umpires anywhere, and you'll have everybody reviewing every single play. For what? For what reason? To get it all perfect? So what? The Giants are going to beat the Dodgers in the division because of somebody touched first base before the first baseman touched the base back in May? I just think we're taking the humanity out of the game while we're ramping up with computerized everything to begin with. We must keep the game the way it is. But Manfred and baseball, and I'm talking about Torrey too, who I've lost all respect for Torrey. I used to love the guy. The whole thing is we must keep certain things the same. That's the beauty of baseball. You can't compare statistics to what Babe Ruth did and Lou Gehrig and Ted Williams did if you're going to stick a runner on second base and make it T-ball. You can't do that. Or 7-inning doubleheaders. They are so concerned these days with we're losing out to football. We're losing out to the speed of basketball. We can't keep the game this long. Why? It's absolutely ridiculous. You must have you can't change a rule like you have to have a pitcher pitch to 3 batters. That's not baseball. Or when they talk about the shift, well, wait a minute. One manager is given 9 players. He can put them all on third base if he wants to, if he thinks that's going to win. If he decides to shift on your hitter, then in spring training, teach your hitters how to hit to the opposite field like they used to do, or to bunt. The point of it is leave these guys alone.
Home run hitters drive Cadillacs. as Ralph kind of used to say.
Yeah.
And that's basically baseball as we knew it. The fundamentals, take two and hit to right field, get the runner advanced. It's not being taught in the minor leagues.
No, it's not. But then you might say then, well, the big teams like the Yankees and the Dodgers and all these guys can pay for all those big home run hitters and stuff like that. But let's take a look at the last 10 years. Kansas City was in the World Series twice and won it once. You know, San Francisco didn't have the biggest budget when it won 3 World Series at the early 2010s. Tampa Bay was in the World Series. Teams find a way. Tampa Bay trades away a bunch of their big players, and their farm system is good. Their scouting people are good. And now the Yankees are trying to copy what Kansas City did back in 2014 and 2015. They realized, let's shorten the game and just get a bunch of arms for the 7th, 8th, and 9th. The game changes. I have no problems with the game changing, but I don't like it when it's almost like I don't like when the government tells me what I have to do. You got to do this, you got to do this, you got to do this. That's un-American to me. So it's the same with baseball, and what makes baseball great. Leave the governing out of it. Leave the spy cameras out of it. Let men play. You know what? Last thing I want to say about it is now you never see, you know what you never see in baseball? You never see a manager run out and scream his head off like Lou Piniella did and Don Zimmer and all these guys and argue a play.
There's less to scream about.
Because of instant replay. Okay.
So theoretically, that should be the devil's advocate for the true fan who wants to. And there was a book written, and I can't think of the author's name, and I'm embarrassed by that because I have the book on my shelf. It's called Get It Right.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a book about umpiring and what we need to do. So the need to get it right in today's day and age, I mean, I equate it with, and this is just an analogy, a silly analogy, but what if there's a way to cure cancer and somebody has cancer? Are you going to try to get everything correct? Are you going to go back and that was silly off the top of my head. But we're in an age where we can go to the computer and get the exact answer.
But look what it does, though. Look what it does to the game. They all talk about we need to shorten the game, so they talk about pitchers coming in, and they talk about you're only allowed 20 seconds in between pitches or whatever it is. They're not looking at instant replay. That's the thing that holds up games. That's one. Two, baseball can't be seen as a medical thing. Baseball must be seen as a Broadway play. It has drama. And I like it. If you killed instant replay, which I think if I was commissioner tomorrow, done and done, I don't care who complains. Okay? Because I want managers to come out and scream their head off and get thrown out of a game and kick up dirt. That's drama. I want to see that. I want to see a play that may be unfair, like when Derek Jeter hit that home run and the guy and a fan touched the ball. Jeffrey Mayer touched the ball. Now, why do I want to see that? The people would say, Seth, wait a minute, that's not fair. It's not fair to the fans of Baltimore. It's not fair. About fairness. I'm talking about, we're still talking about that play today. You get into a cab in New York City, and they say, well, I don't know if Reggie stuck his leg out to, in the 77 World Series or 78 World Series. And, he should have been called out on that play. Controversy is part of the play. It's part of the game. That's what makes it fun. It's part of what, not, hey, they went to instant replay. You ever hear anybody talk about instant replay? No. The game is less enjoyable. That was the original question you asked me. Do I love baseball? You know I love baseball. I love baseball. But they've taken so much humanity out of it. They've taken out the human element. I know that there are bad umpires. They eventually don't do the playoffs, and some are picked out as worse than better. Some are obviously bad. Some are very good. But I believe that most plays, you get as many good ones as you get bad ones as well. And so it evens out, but you just let the players play. You let them play 17 innings if they have to get a winner. You don't make 7-inning doubleheaders and sticking a guy on second base. Have you ever heard of anything so absurd?
The sticking a guy at second bastardizes the entire rule book in a way that's sickening. But beyond that, it reminds us that we could never compare generations to generation. You couldn't compare anything before Jackie to the way it is now. So
that's right. Baseball is its records. That's the thing. Right. That's what it is. But Rob Manfred and the powers that be now, over these last 5-10 years, they think, no, it's got to change. The track it was on was just fine. It's a game that gives you different emotions than football. It's a different game. Don't compare it to football. Don't compare. They're so afraid they're losing the younger group that doesn't, enough kids aren't going to want to play baseball because there aren't, it goes too slow. Well, get rid of the instant replay where players have to stand around for 2 minutes in the outfield. And then it goes to these guys. We don't even know who they are in some booth in New York. We don't know who they are. Every play is the Zapruder film. Every play is the John F. Kennedy assassination. They think it's that big a deal. And so managers now are relying on bench coaches, look at the play quick to see whether I'll use one of my 3 things or whatever. How absurd is that?
Well, your analogy to the Magruder thing is funny because people want the exactness for a lot of reasons, but one of them is we never did find out about Kennedy.
Well, I disagree with that. I think that it was pretty simple about Kennedy. I think it was. I think it is in the. I think Lee Harvey Oswald killed him. He killed him on the second. He hurt him in the second shot, and he killed him with the third shot.
Well,
and all the tests that have been done.
Where did the magic bullet come from, Seth?
There was no magic bullet. There wasn't a magic bullet. Yeah, what people don't understand. Yeah, what people don't understand is that Kennedy was sitting higher up in that back seat, and Connolly was lower, and so that bullet's pathway went through all of them and did what it did. That's what bullets do. And it was going down. They weren't sitting straight in front of each other like you would imagine in a normal car. Connolly was sitting much lower than Kennedy was. No one ever brings that up.
That bullet was absolutely unscathed.
But they've done many, many tests in many, many years. That's a very common thing. That's not uncommon.
There is no absolute definitive answer to this. Despite what you believe and what I believe, the Warren Commission was absolutely scandalous right from the beginning. Rush to Judgment still is a book that can be read. And we get off the subject, but that's what America wants right now.
I don't think they necessarily want instant replay. I think that it was instituted. Look, I'll give you another example. Let's get off of instant replay for 1 second. You remember the championship series in the National League in 2015. I forgot the players, but one of them was Chase Utley. The Dodgers were losing to the Mets. The Mets had all the momentum. Chase Utley went in very strong into second base, break up a double play.
Broke the kid's leg.
Broke the kid's leg, right? Joe Torre stepped in because having one of the Mets' big players out was quote unquote unfair. Do you think they would have done that? Do you think that they would have suspended They suspended Utley. Do you think that they would have done that in the 50s or the 40s or the 30s? No. They would have played baseball. And it was absolutely right of Utley to go in. He tried to fire up his team. He was playing hard-nosed, old-line baseball. But no, if you hurt somebody, because we all have to play nice, remember, nobody gets hurt, or that ridiculous thing of – now, I saw the Ray Fosse play.
Yeah.
I remember it, but when Buster Posey was hurt, then they reinstituted a thing where you got to play nice at home, and especially when it comes to pitching. The game is based around a few inches that the pitcher says, this is mine. I own the inside of the plate. And the batter says, no, I own the inside of the plate. That's where the whole game mostly occurs, right? But if you get the ball a little too on the inside, then you get a warning, because don't forget, we all have to be nice.
Okay. Now, Seth, we've talked about this has been wonderful for me. You're an old-fashioned baseball fan, and what they're taking away is that two fans sit at a game. The time between pitches, no matter how long it takes, is a time to converse, to talk about the game, to remember, to compare what's going on now to back in the 50s.
Yes.
And I understand everything you've said, and you are a positive person. I got to ask you, what's better about the game than before, if anything, in your head?
Well, I think, the players train in a way these days that was so far and above any other time that we're really seeing the top athletes in the world. We're really seeing some fabulous athletes. Now, we saw some fabulous athletes back in those days, the Jackie Robinsons. I wasn't around for Jackie Robinson, but I know, I've seen enough. And my dad talks about him to this day. So we saw some fabulous athletes back then. But we're really seeing, some fabulous, fabulous athletes. Now, not to go back into something that might appear negative, but, the game has changed, and I appreciate changes in the game. Look, there wasn't home run hitting before Babe Ruth hit 50 in 1920. He hit more, 54. I think he hit more than every other team combined. So the game changed. They found other home run hitters, Jimmy Fox and guys like that. But it's when you look at the fact that Ferguson Jenkins had 30, 35 complete games. I don't think there's 3 players that have 10 complete games, or 5 in regular baseball. If you go 5 innings these days, that's considered a good start, or 6 innings.
So what you're saying is that you admire the relief pitcher who could come in and shut him down.
I admire the fact that, yes, that it's a different game. It's a game of specialties. You could say that the doctors that we all went to back in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, they kind of did everything in a way, but then there became specialties. So isn't that a good thing? If you hurt your foot, you go to a specialist as opposed to your family doctor, right? So it's the same with baseball. Now there are guys that really, they're 7th inning specialists, they're 8th inning guys. But when everything is said and done, it's still about getting 27 outs in any way you can do it.
Right. And you know what? No matter what the game is and what it's turned into, it's still the best game in town. It's still
I love it. Because to me it's a chess game much more than, let's say football. I love football and basketball. I love all the sports. I love hockey very much. But baseball is longer. It's played over a longer period. It's played every day almost. And there's nuances to it, I spelled out my true feelings on it. You could tell I have no opinion, Ralph, right?
Hey, Seth, let this be chapter 1, and you keep coming back time and again, because I just really enjoy talking to you. It's your first time, and I'm just thrilled with the way it went. You're forthcoming, and you have opinions without being opinionated, and that's what this network is about. So,
you. Thank you for having me on. And I want to tell you, I love the game of baseball, and I'm an avid watcher, and I play fantasy baseball, and I love it. I love it very much, and I win almost every year. I take it so seriously, every game, every day. So don't get the wrong idea. I love, love, love the game. What I professed and what I was talking about really is born of frustration, where I thought that the game really, I thought it was better, and that's what you asked me. So please don't misinterpret that I don't love the game.
Not at all. This is called the what was the cold stove league, hot stove league.
There you go.
And Seth, let me ask you before I let you go. What are you working on? What's your next project? What are you excited about?
Well, right now, yes, I'm
anything.
doing. I had a movie that's still playing in England called Beatles Stories, where I interviewed all the producers and ex-girlfriends and friends of all the Beatles and all the little stories that you might not have heard, and that's playing on British TV right now. So I'm doing Beatles Stories Volume 2. I'm almost done with that film, and I'm making another book, my 6th book, and at the same time I'm still continuing to make music and make another album. I've done 7 albums myself as a songwriter. So it's art 24/7, and then but sprinkled in with a lot of baseball.
Seth, when are you going to do something with your life?
That's what I asked myself. By the way, if you want to see anything, any of my art or any of my things, it's on my site is realseth.com.
Beautiful. You've been a great guest. Thank you.
Thank you.
Comfortably Zone Radio Network. I'm Ralph Tycho, kind of the weak link of it all, but can I ever produce? Whoa. Seth Swirsky. And I had to rehearse 3 or 4 times over this last few weeks to pronounce your name, and I'm getting that right. So
at least you didn't say Gasper. Gaspar. Gaspar.
He was very nice about correcting me, but I always thought, and I would make fun of other non-Met fans who pronounced his name Gasper all the year. It's Gaspar. Blah, 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 blah. So one thing I learned, you could never learn it all, never know it all. And I'm so appreciative of you being here. Thank you very much.
It's my honor. Thank you very much.
And thank you out there for listening. It's the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. All of our 3,100 offerings are archived on YouTube. So if you just go to YouTube and punch in Comfortably Zoned, you're liable to find the greatest entertainment going. I'm humble, but not that humble. Thank you very much, everybody, for listening. All I can say is adios and happy trails.
The proceeding has been a Comfortably Zoned network production. You are advised to keep your dreams wet, your humor dry, your children and grandchildren out of military recruiting offices and off the laps of clerics who wear dresses. Thank you for listening, everyone. Happy trails.